The Velthari Empire was old. It had ruled 1,000 star systems for 10,000 years. The noble families controlled everything. They believed that blood was everything. Good blood meant power. Bad blood meant nothing. Princess Iris stood alone in her chamber on the night before her wedding. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her skin was pale blue, like all Velthari. Her eyes were silver. Her hair was white and fell past her shoulders. She was beautiful by any standard. But none of that mattered. She was defective. The doctors had told her when she was 12 years old. Her body could not carry children. In Velthari society, this made her worthless. A princess who could not produce heirs was not a princess at all. She was a burden, a shame, a mistake that should have been corrected at birth. Her father, Emperor Keleth, had never looked at her the same way after that day. Her mother had stopped visiting her chambers. Her sisters whispered about her when they thought she could not hear. For 15 years, Zyrith had lived in the shadows of the imperial palace, forgotten by everyone who should have loved her. Now she was 27 years old, and her father had finally found a use for her. The humans had arrived in the galaxy 50 years ago. They were new. They were weak. They had only one planet and a handful of colonies. The other great empires laughed at them. The Velthari called them primitives. The Krithini called them insects. The Morvathi refused to even acknowledge their existence. But the Galactic Council had rules. When a new species joined, the great powers had to make gestures of peace, trade agreements, cultural exchanges, and sometimes marriages. Emperor Keleth had received the request 6 months ago. The humans wanted a diplomatic marriage to strengthen ties with the Velthari Empire. They were naive. They did not understand that such marriages were meant to be between equals. They did not realize they were asking for something far above their station. The Emperor had smiled when he read the request. He had finally found the perfect punishment for the humans, and the perfect way to dispose of his unwanted daughter. He offered them Zyrith. The Galactic Council had watched in silence. The other empires had hidden their laughter behind formal expressions. Everyone understood the insult. The humans were being given damaged goods. They were being told, without words, exactly how little they mattered. The humans had accepted with gratitude. They did not understand. They thought they were receiving a great honor. Zyrith had not been asked if she wanted this. No one asked defective princesses what they wanted. The wedding ceremony was held in the great hall of the imperial palace. Thousands of nobles attended, dressed in their finest robes. They watched as Zyrith walked down the long aisle toward her human husband. His name was Daniel Harper. He was a commander in something called the Earth Coalition Navy. He was 34 years old. He had brown hair and brown eyes and skin that was an odd pinkish color. He was shorter than most Velthari males. He looked confused by all the ceremony. Zyrith studied him as she approached. She had read his file. He was not a diplomat or a politician. He was a former combat medic from a place called Ohio. He had spent most of his career saving lives on battlefields. He had been chosen for this marriage because he was unmarried and had no important family connections. The humans had sent her a nobody. Perhaps that was fitting. She was a nobody too. The ceremony was long and formal. Words were spoken in the old Velthari language. Oaths were made. Rings were exchanged. Through it all, Zyrith kept her face empty. She had learned long ago not to show her feelings. When it was over, the nobles applauded politely. Behind their smiles, she could see their amusement. They were enjoying this. They were watching the defective princess being sent away with the primitive humans. It was the funniest thing that had happened at court in years. Emperor Keleth embraced her for the cameras. He whispered in her ear as he held her. "Try not to embarrass us too badly," he said. "Though I suppose it does not matter. No one will be watching." Zyrith said nothing. She had stopped expecting kindness from her father years ago. The human ship was waiting in orbit. It was called the Horizon's End. It was small compared to Velthari warships, barely the size of a patrol cruiser. But it was clean and well-maintained. The crew seemed nervous but friendly. Daniel Harper led her to their quarters. The rooms were small but comfortable. There were books on the shelves. Real paper books. Zyrith had never seen anything like them. She stood in the middle of the room, unsure what to do. She had been trained to expect cruelty from her husband. She had been told that humans were violent and unpredictable. She had prepared herself for a life of suffering. Daniel sat down in a chair across from her. He looked uncomfortable, like he did not know what to do either. "So," he said, "I know this is strange for both of us, but I figured we should start somewhere." He paused and rubbed the back of his neck. "What is your favorite food?" Zyrith stared at him. Of all the things she had expected him to say, this was not one of them. "I do not understand," she said. "Your favorite food," Daniel repeated. "What do you like to eat?" "I asked the kitchen to prepare something nice for our first dinner together, but I realized I have no idea what you enjoy." Zyrith did not know how to answer. No one had ever asked her what she enjoyed. No one had ever cared what she wanted to eat. At the palace, she ate whatever was served to her and was grateful she was allowed to eat at all. "I do not know," she admitted. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Something in his expression changed. She could not read human faces well yet, but she thought she saw something like sadness in his eyes. "Okay," he said gently. "That is okay. We will figure it out together. We have time." He smiled at her. It was a small smile, but it was real. There was no mockery in it. No cruelty. No hidden meaning. Zyrith felt something strange in her chest. She did not have a word for it. She had never felt it before. It would take her many months to understand that the feeling was hope. That night, she slept in a real bed for the first time in years. Daniel slept on a small couch in the other room. He told her he wanted her to be comfortable. He told her he would not ask anything of her that she did not want to give. She lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand what kind of species these humans were. Back on Veltaris Prime, the nobles were still laughing about the wedding. They raised their glasses and made jokes about the primitive humans and their defective bride. None of them realized that they had just made the biggest mistake in the history of their empire. Daniel watched his wife transform over the following weeks. The quiet, wounded woman he had married was becoming someone fierce, someone determined, someone who would not be ignored. Zyret began reaching out to other Velthari. Not the nobles who had mocked her. Not the powerful families who had treated her like garbage. She reached out to the exiles, the refugees, the ones who had been thrown away just like her. For centuries, the Velthari Empire had been casting out its unwanted people. Defectives, political enemies, anyone who did not fit the perfect image of what a Velthari should be. These people had scattered across the galaxy. They lived in the shadows. They survived on scraps. They had been forgotten by everyone. Until now. Zyrith sent messages to every Velthari community she could find. She did not speak to them as a princess. She spoke to them as one of them. "I was thrown away like you," she said in her first broadcast. "I was told I was worthless. I was told I would never matter. But I am still here, and I am telling you that we matter. All of us. Every single one." The response was slow at first. Many exiles did not trust her. They had been betrayed too many times. They thought this might be a trick, but Zyrith kept reaching out. She shared her own story. She talked about her childhood in the palace. She talked about the doctors who had told her she was defective. She talked about her father who had given her away as a joke, She talked about Daniel, about humans, about a species that measured family by love instead of blood. Slowly, the exiles began to respond. Messages came from all across the galaxy. Millions of Velthari had been cast out over the centuries. They had built small communities on forgotten stations and abandoned moons. They had survived despite everything. Now they were listening. One message came from an old Velthari male named Torvin. He had been a general in the Imperial fleet before he was exiled for having a defective son. He had spent 30 years wandering the galaxy, but he had never forgotten how to fight. "Princess," he wrote, "I have waited my whole life for someone to say what you are saying. Tell me what you need." Another message came from a woman named Selah. She had been a scientist before she was cast out for refusing to sterilize her own daughter. She had spent years studying human technology in secret. "The humans are more advanced than the Empire realizes," she wrote. "Their ships are smaller, but their weapons are more efficient. Their tactics are unpredictable. If we could combine Velthari numbers with human ingenuity, we might have a chance." The messages kept coming. Soldiers, scientists, engineers, teachers, doctors, people with skills and knowledge and burning desire to fight back against the Empire that had rejected them. But Xyrath knew that refugees alone could not win a war. They had no ships. They had no weapons. They had no training. She needed help. Admiral Nicole Vasquez was the commander of the Earth Coalition, Third Fleet. She was a short woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had spent 40 years in the military. She had fought in 3 wars. She had never lost. When Xyrath requested a meeting, Vasquez agreed immediately. They met in a conference room on the space station orbiting Mars. Xyrath brought Daniel with her. Vasquez brought her senior staff. "I know why you are here," Vasquez said before Xyrath could speak. "You want to build an army. You want to take back your empire. And you want human help to do it." "Yes," Xyrath said. Vasquez studied her for a long moment. "The Velthari Empire has treated humanity like dirt for 50 years. They blocked our expansion. They denied us trade rights. They laughed at us in the Galactic Council." "I know," Xyrath said. "I was raised in that empire. I know exactly what they think of humans. And yet you married one." "I did not choose to marry Daniel," Xyrath admitted. "My father gave me to him as an insult. He thought he was throwing away his unwanted daughter to primitive aliens." She looked at Daniel, who stood quietly beside her. He was wrong. About everything. Vasquez leaned forward. "What exactly are you proposing, Princess?" Xyrath took a deep breath. "I have millions of exiled Velthari ready to fight. They have the will but not the means. Earth has ships and weapons and training. I am proposing an alliance. And what does Earth get in return? When we win, you get a friend in the Velthari Empire. No more blocked trade routes. No more denied rights. Full partnership in everything." Vasquez was quiet for a long moment. Her staff shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "The Galactic Council will not approve of this," one of her officers said. "The other empires will see it as an act of war. The other empires have been content to watch the Velthari murder their own people," Xyrath said. Her voice was hard. "They do not care about the defectives being rounded up and killed. They do not care about the children being torn from their families. The Council has rules against genocide, but they will not enforce them against the Velthari." She stood up and looked around the room. "You can wait for permission that will never come. Or you can do what is right." Vasquez smiled. It was a cold smile, the smile of someone who had been waiting for exactly this opportunity. "You are right that the Council will not approve," she said. "But I have learned something in my 40 years of service. Sometimes you have to make your own rules." She extended her hand to Xyrath. "You have a deal, Princess." Xyrath shook her hand. Her grip was strong. The work began immediately. Human military advisors were sent to the largest exile communities to begin training. Human shipyards started construction on new vessels, modified with both human and Velthari technology. Human intelligence officers began gathering information on Maldois and his forces. Daniel worked alongside his wife through all of it. He was not a strategist or a politician, but he had other skills. He organized medical supplies. He counseled traumatized refugees. He held Xyrath when she woke from nightmares about her childhood. "You do not have to do this," she told him one night. "This is not your fight." Daniel looked at her with those steady brown eyes. "You are my wife," he said. "Your fight is my fight." Xyrath felt tears in her eyes. She had never cried in front of anyone before. But with Daniel, she did not have to hide. Months passed. The army grew. The fleet took shape. The exiles trained and prepared and waited. News came from the Empire that Maldois had heard about what his sister was doing. He had laughed about it in court. The defective princess and her army of cripples, he called them, supported by primitive humans. What a joke. He sent a message to Xyrath directly. "Come home, little sister. I will make your death quick. It is more than you deserve." Xyrath read the message and smiled. "He is underestimating us," she said. Admiral Vasquez nodded. "Good, let him. The moment he realizes his mistake, it will already be too late." The defective armada, as the humans called it, was nearly ready. Thousands of ships, millions of soldiers, all of them united by a single purpose. Xyrath looked out at the fleet gathering near Jupiter. She thought about all the people who had called her worthless. All the people who had told her she would never amount to anything. She wondered what they would think now. "Are you ready?" Daniel asked, standing beside her. Xyrath took his hand. "I have been ready my entire life." The fleet began to move. The first months of marriage were strange for Xyrath. She kept waiting for the cruelty to begin. She kept expecting Daniel to show his true nature. Every morning she woke up and prepared herself for pain, but the pain never came. Daniel was patient with her. He asked her questions about her life and listened when she answered. He did not interrupt. He did not tell her that her feelings were wrong. He just listened. She learned that he came from a small town in a place called Ohio. His father had been a farmer. His mother had been a teacher. He had 2 sisters and 1 brother. His family was not rich or important. They were just ordinary people. "My sister Katie has 3 kids," Daniel told her one evening. They were sitting in the small garden area of the ship, looking at the stars through the viewing window. None of them are her blood children. She adopted them. Xyrath did not understand the word. Adopted? It means she chose them, Daniel explained. Their birth parents could not take care of them. So Katie and her husband took them in. They raised them as their own. But they do not share her blood, Xyrath said slowly. They are not truly her children. Daniel looked at her with surprise. Of course they are her children. She loves them. She raises them. She takes care of them when they are sick. She celebrates their birthdays. She worries about them when they go to school. He shook his head. Blood does not make a family, Xyrath. Love does. Xyrath did not know what to say. This was so different from everything she had been taught. In Velthari society, blood was everything. Without blood, you were nothing. She thought about this for many days. She began to study human history. The ship had a large database, and Daniel encouraged her to use it. She read about human wars and human peace. She read about their art and their music. She read about their struggles and their triumphs. One thing surprised her more than anything else. Humans had been underestimated by everyone they had ever met. Other nations on their own planet had dismissed them. Other species in the galaxy had laughed at them. And yet they kept going. They kept building. They kept growing. They never gave up. When the horizon's end reached Earth, Xyrith saw the human homeworld for the first time. It was a small planet, blue and green and white with clouds. It was nothing compared to the vast worlds of the Velthri Empire. But it was beautiful. The humans welcomed her warmly. They held ceremonies in her honor. They gave her gifts. They asked her about Velthri culture with genuine curiosity. She met Daniel's family. His mother hugged her without hesitation. His father shook her hand and told her she was welcome in their home. His sister Katie introduced her to her 3 adopted children, who stared at Xyrith with wide eyes and asked if she was really a princess from space. No one treated her like she was defective. No one looked at her with pity or disgust. They just treated her like a person. Xyrith started to change. She began speaking her mind. At first, it was small things. She told Daniel when she did not like a particular food. She told him when she wanted to be alone. She told him when she disagreed with something. He said Daniel never punished her for this. He never grew angry. He just nodded and adjusted. Sometimes he even thanked her for being honest. One night, she found herself laughing at a joke he made. The sound surprised her. She could not remember the last time she had laughed. Daniel smiled at her. "You have a beautiful laugh," he said. "You should do it more often." Xyrith felt her face grow warm. She did not know how to respond. 6 months after her wedding, she received a message from Velthris Prime. Her father, Emperor Kelith, had fallen ill. The doctors did not know if he would recover. Her brother, Crown Prince Malloys, had taken control of the empire. Malloys had always been cruel. When they were children, he had tormented Xyrith constantly. He had called her names. He had told her she should have been killed at birth. He had once locked her in a dark closet for 3 days because she had embarrassed him in front of his friends. Now he had power, and he was using it. The message included reports of what was happening in the empire. Mallows was purging the noble houses that opposed him. He was executing anyone he considered a threat. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was what he was doing to the genetic underclass. Every society has people at the bottom. In the Velthri Empire, these were the defectives. People born with genetic problems. People who could not produce healthy children. People like Xyrith. For centuries, these people had been treated as second-class citizens. They were denied good jobs. They were forbidden from marrying into noble families. They were often sterilized so they could not pass on their defective genes. But they had been allowed to live. Mallois changed that under his rule. The defectives were being rounded up by the thousands. They were being taken to special facilities. They were being sterilized by force. Some were simply disappearing. A second message arrived from Xyrith's old handmaiden, Scylla. Scylla had been her only friend in the palace. She was one of the few people who had ever shown Xyrith kindness. "Princess," the message said, "things are very bad here. The soldiers came to my village last week. They took everyone who had been marked as defective. My sister was among them. We have not heard from her since." The message continued with stories of horror. Children taken from their parents. Families torn apart. People executed for trying to protect their loved ones. "Please," Scylla wrote, "if there is anything you can do, anything at all. We are dying here." Xyrith read the message 3 times. Her hands were shaking. She thought about her life in the palace. She thought about all the years of cruelty and neglect. She thought about her father who had thrown her away, and her brother who had tormented her. She had no love for the empire that had rejected her. But the people being killed were not the empire. They were people like her. People who had been born different. People who had never been given a chance. For the first time in her life, Xyrith felt rage. It burned in her chest like a fire. It made her hands clench into fists. It made her jaw tighten until her teeth hurt. Daniel found her sitting in their quarters, staring at the wall. The message was still displayed on the screen. "Zyrith?" he asked gently. "What is wrong?" She turned to look at him. Her silver eyes were hard. Her voice was steady. "My brother is killing my people," she said. "The ones like me. The defectives. He is murdering them." Daniel sat down beside her. He took her hand in his. "What do you want to do?" he asked. Zyrith looked at him. She thought about all the lessons she had learned in the past 6 months. She thought about adoption. She thought about love making a family. She thought about humans who never gave up no matter how many times they were underestimated. "I want to stop him," she said. "I want to save them." Daniel squeezed her hand. "Then we will figure out how." In that moment, something changed in Zyrith. The broken princess who had arrived on the human ship was gone. In her place was something new. Something stronger, something dangerous. She did not know it yet, but she had just taken the first step on a path that would change the galaxy forever. Crown Prince Maldois received the report while eating his breakfast. A servant handed him the datapad, and he glanced at it with mild interest. His sister had gathered a fleet. The defectives and the humans were coming. They had entered Valtteri space 3 days ago and were heading toward nearest station, a military outpost on the edge of the Empire. Maldois laughed so hard he nearly choked on his food. "How many ships?" he asked. "Several thousand, Your Highness," the servant said nervously. "Send Admiral Korath with 20 warships. That should be more than enough to crush this little rebellion." The servant hesitated. "Your Highness, some of the generals suggest we send a larger force. The humans have never faced us in battle before. We do not know what they are capable of." Maldois waved his hand dismissively. "The humans are primitives. They have been in space for 50 years. We have been conquering the stars for 10,000. 20 ships will be plenty." He returned to his breakfast and did not think about it again. Admiral Korath was a proud man. He had served the Empire for 60 years. He had fought in 12 wars. He had never lost a battle. When he received his orders, he gathered his fleet and set course for nearest station. He expected an easy victory. He expected the defectives to run at the first sign of a real fight. He expected the humans to surrender the moment they saw the power of a real military force. He was wrong about everything. The Battle of nearest station began at sunrise on a cold morning. Korath's fleet arrived to find the rebel forces waiting for them in perfect formation. He counted over 3,000 ships. More than he had expected, but still nothing compared to the might of the Valtteri Empire. "Signal them to surrender," he ordered. "Tell them I will be merciful if they give up now." The signal was sent. The response came back immediately. "Come and take us." Korath smiled. These fools had chosen death. He would give it to them. "All ships, attack formation. Advance and destroy." The Valtteri warships moved forward in perfect lines. This was how they had fought for 10,000 years. Rigid formations. Coordinated attacks. Honor and discipline above all else. The humans did not fight like this. The first thing Korath noticed was that his sensors were going crazy. Static filled his screens. His communications were full of noise. He could not contact half of his ships. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Electronic warfare, Admiral," his tactical officer reported. "The humans are jamming our systems." Korath had never heard of such a thing. In proper warfare, you faced your enemy directly. You did not hide behind tricks and deception. Before he could respond, the rebel fleet moved. But they did not advance in formation. They scattered in all directions, small groups of ships racing toward his fleet from different angles. "They are breaking apart," Korath said with satisfaction. "They are panicking. Press the attack." His ships moved forward, and then they started exploding. The humans had filled the space between the two fleets with mines, thousands of them, hidden among debris and asteroids. The Valkyrie sensors, still blinded by electronic jamming, could not detect them. 3 warships were destroyed in the first minute, 4 more in the second. Korath watched in horror as his perfect formation fell apart. Evasive maneuvers. He shouted, "Get us out of the minefield." But it was too late. The rebel ships were already among them. Commander Ryan Ortiz led the human contingent from the bridge of the cruiser Iron Horse. He was a young man, only 32 years old, but he had studied warfare his entire life. He knew that the Valkyrie expected their enemies to fight with honor. He had no intention of fighting with honor. "All units, target their command ships first," he ordered. "Blind them, confuse them, then tear them apart." The human ships were smaller than the Valkyrie warships, but they were faster and more agile. They darted between the larger vessels, hitting weak points and retreating before the Valkyrie guns could track them. The Valkyrie exiles fought alongside them. Many of them had been soldiers before they were cast out. They knew how the Imperial fleet thought. They knew where the weaknesses were. Torvin, the old general who had been exiled for having a defective son, led a squadron of converted freighters against Korath's flagship. His ships were held together with patches and prayers, but his crews were driven by 30 years of rage. For everyone they threw away. He shouted as his ships opened fire. The Valkyrie flagship shuddered under the assault. Korath could not believe what was happening. His fleet was being torn apart by refugees and primitives. "Retreat," he ordered. "All ships retreat." But the rebel forces did not let them go. Ortiz had studied human military history. He knew that a retreating enemy was the most dangerous kind. He also knew that letting them escape meant they would come back stronger. "No quarter," he ordered. "We finish this now." One Valkyrie cruiser tried to ram the Iron Horse in a desperate attempt to take at least one enemy with it. Ortiz saw it coming and did something no Valkyrie commander would ever expect. He turned his ship directly toward the oncoming cruiser and fired every weapon he had. The Valkyrie ship exploded moments before impact. The shockwave rocked the Iron Horse, but it held together. "That was insane," his first officer said. Ortiz grinned. "That is how humans fight." The battle lasted 4 hours. When it was over, Admiral Korath's fleet was destroyed. 18 of his 20 warships were debris. The remaining 2 had surrendered. Korath himself was captured. He stood on the deck of the Iron Horse, staring at the human commander with disbelief in his eyes. "How?" he asked. "How did you do this? You are primitives. You have only been in space for 50 years. Ortiz looked at him calmly. "You spent 10,000 years perfecting one way of fighting. We spent 50 years learning from everyone, including you." Korath had no response. News of the battle spread across the galaxy like fire. The Valkyrie Empire had been defeated, not by another great power, but by exiles and humans. The impossible had happened. On 100 worlds, the defectives heard the news. The people who had been told they were worthless. The people who had been sterilized and imprisoned and killed. They heard about Princess Zyrith and her army. They heard about the humans who fought dirty and never gave up. And they began to hope. On Veltharus Prime, Maldois received the report. He did not laugh this time. He threw the datapad across the room and screamed at his servants. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "How did she defeat Korath?" No one had an answer. Maldois ordered a full mobilization. Every warship in the Empire was to be gathered. Every soldier was to be prepared for battle. He would crush his sister and her pathetic rebellion himself. But even as he gave the orders, doubt crept into his mind. He had dismissed the humans as primitives. He had dismissed his sister as defective. He had been so certain of his superiority. Now he was not certain of anything. Xyrith stood on the bridge of her command ship, watching the debris of the Imperial fleet drift through space. Daniel stood beside her as he always did. "We won," he said. "We won one battle," she corrected. "The war is just beginning." But she allowed herself a small smile. For the first time in her life, the people who had called her worthless were afraid. It felt good. The war lasted 3 years. Xyrith did not fight as a general. She left the military strategy to people like Admiral Vasquez and Commander Ortiz and old General Torvin. She fought as something more important. She fought as a symbol. Every week, she broadcast messages to the Velthri people. Not to the nobles. Not to the powerful. She spoke to the ordinary citizens. The workers. The farmers. The merchants. The ones who had always been told to obey without question. "Look at the soldiers fighting beside me," she said in one message. "Look at the defectives your emperor calls worthless. Look at the humans your nobles call primitive. Ask yourselves who is truly worthy. Ask yourselves what you have been taught to believe and why." The messages spread despite Maldois's attempts to block them. People copied them and shared them in secret. They whispered about the princess who had returned, the defective who had built an army. The Imperial forces fractured slowly, then all at once. It started with small things. Soldiers who refused to fire on civilian populations. Officers who let rebel ships escape when they could have destroyed them. Supply convoys that mysteriously lost their way and ended up in rebel hands. Then the noble houses began to defect. House Vareth was the first. Their youngest daughter had been born with a genetic defect similar to Xyrith's. They had hidden her for years, protecting her from the sterilization squads. When they saw Xyrith's broadcasts, they made a choice. "Our daughter is not worthless," Lord Vareth declared in his public announcement. "The Empire is wrong. We stand with the princess." Other houses followed. Some did it for political advantage, sensing which way the wind was blowing. Some did it because they had their own hidden defectives they wanted to protect. Some did it simply because they were tired of Maldois's cruelty. The genetic underclass rose up on planet after planet. People who had been sterilized. People who had lost family members to the purges. People who had lived in fear for their entire lives. They had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. Maldois responded with more violence. He sent his death squads to crush the uprisings. He executed anyone suspected of disloyalty. He burned entire villages to make examples, but every atrocity just created more rebels. Every act of cruelty just proved what Xyrith had been saying all along. Daniel stayed by his wife's side through all of it. He was not a warrior, but he found other ways to help. He organized medical care for wounded soldiers. He counseled traumatized refugees who had escaped the death squads. He held Xyrith when the weight of everything became too heavy. One night, she asked him if he regretted any of it. Marrying her, getting involved in our war, putting himself and his species in danger. Daniel thought about it for a long moment. "I think about the version of my life where I never met you," he said finally. "Where I stayed on Earth and lived a normal life. Got married to someone from Ohio, had kids, died of old age without ever doing anything important." He looked at her. That life would have been fine. But this life matters. What we are doing matters. And I would rather matter than be comfortable. Xyrith did not have words for what she felt in that moment. She just held him and did not let go. The final battle took place above, Veltharis Prime. Maldois had gathered every warship he had left. Over 500 vessels, including the massive dreadnought Imperial Glory that had never been defeated in battle. He positioned his fleet in orbit around the homeworld and waited. Xyrith arrived with an armada of nearly 1,000 ships. Velthri exiles, human cruisers, converted freighters and stolen military vessels. A fleet built from nothing by people who had been told they were nothing. Before the battle began, Maldois sent a message. "Surrender, little sister. I will give you a quick death. It is more than you deserve." Xyrith responded with a message of her own. But she did not send it to Malais. She sent it to every ship in his fleet. "You do not have to die for him. You do not have to fight for a ruler who treats his own people like garbage. Look at who stands beside me. Look at the defectives. Look at the humans. We are not monsters. We are not primitives. We are just people who want to be free." She paused. "Join us or stand aside. But do not die for a tyrant who would throw you away the moment you became inconvenient." The response was immediate. Dozens of ships broke formation and fled. Others turned their weapons toward their former comrades and joined the rebel fleet. Maldois screamed orders and threats, but his fleet was falling apart. The battle was brutal, but brief. The human ships used their electronic warfare to blind the Imperial sensors. The exile squadrons targeted the command ships with precision strikes. The converted freighters rammed damaged vessels and sent them spinning into their allies. When it was over, the Imperial glory was surrounded. Maldois had nowhere to run. Commander Ortiz wanted to destroy the ship. General Torvin wanted to board it and kill everyone inside. But Xyrith had a different idea. She boarded the ship herself, with Daniel at her side and a squad of human marines around them. They fought their way through the corridors until they reached the bridge. Maldois was waiting for them. He looked older than Xyrith remembered. His face was gaunt. His eyes were wild. He had lost everything, and he knew it. "You should have died in the palace," he said. "You should have been discarded at birth like all the other defectives." Xyrith stood before her brother. She remembered all the years of torment. The names he had called her. The days he had locked her in the dark. The constant reminder that she was worthless. She could have killed him. No one would have blamed her. He deserved it, but she did not. "You do not get to die quickly," she said. "You do not get to escape what you have done." She had him taken to the medical facilities where he had ordered the forced sterilizations. She had him stand before the survivors of his death squads. She let them see the man who had destroyed their lives. "What should we do with him?" she asked them. The people decided. Not Xyrith. Not the nobles. The people died. They chose exile. Maldois was stripped of his titles and his power. He was sent to live on a dead moon at the edge of the galaxy, alone with his memories and his shame. For someone who had valued blood and status above all else, it was a fate worse than death. In the aftermath, Xyrith was offered the throne. The nobles who remained expected her to take it. The exiles wanted her to rule. Even Admiral Vasquez suggested it might be the best way to ensure lasting peace. But Xyrith refused. "I did not fight for power," she said. "I fought for the people who were thrown away. I will not become another tyrant sitting on a throne." Instead, she established a council. Representatives from all Velthari, regardless of genetic status. Nobles and commoners. Pure and defective. Everyone would have a voice. It was messy. It was imperfect. There were arguments and disagreements and moments when it seemed like everything would fall apart. But it survived. And slowly, it grew stronger. Xyrith returned to Earth with Daniel. She became an ambassador, building bridges between the Velthari and humanity. She gave speeches about unity and cooperation. She visited schools and told children that their worth was not decided by their blood. One day, a human journalist asked her the question everyone wanted to know. "You gave up the throne. You gave up power. Why?" Xyrith looked at Daniel, who sat beside her as he always did. "Because I already have everything I ever wanted," she said. "I have someone who sees me. Someone who loves me for who I am, not what I can produce. I have proven that worth is not something you are born with. It is something you choose to build. She smiled. What more could I possibly need? The journalist nodded and wrote down her words. Across the galaxy, the Galactic Council watched the rise of the Human-Velthri alliance with growing concern. The humans had proven themselves more capable than anyone had expected. The Velthri exiles had shown that even the rejected and forgotten could change history. The other great empires began to reconsider their assumptions. The Crethani stopped calling humans insects. The Morvathi started responding to their communications. Everyone was paying attention now. Daniel and Zyrith grew old together. They adopted 3 children, all of them defectives by Velthri standards. They raised them with love and taught them that family was about choice, not blood. Years later, when historians wrote about the revolution, they always included the same detail. It all started because an emperor thought he could throw away his daughter as a joke. He should never have laughed.